The National News Desk, locally covered, nationally connected.
With President Trump's signature, the federal government is back open. How long until furloughed workers get back pay, and how costly the shutdown was for the country as a whole.
I was hearing from House Republicans that if the discharge petition was filed, it'd be really hard not to vote for this bill to release the Epstein files.
The House vote on the Epstein files has been scheduled. What that means for the investigation and how likely it is these documents are made public to the American people.
This will create new educational and employment opportunities countrywide.
And a big announcement from the First Lady to boost resources for youth transitioning out of foster care. The executive order signed by both Trumps to help our nation's children. Good evening. I'm Taylor Murray. Welcome to the National News Desk, America's News Now. The federal government is now open for the first time in 44 days. The Office of Personnel Management sent messages to the federal workforce telling them normal operations were in effect and all employees were expected to be in on time. Back pay is now in the process of being distributed to all workers who missed paychecks. The first payouts could come as early as Sunday, with the expectation that all employees will be paid by Wednesday the 19th. But the shutdown cost is still being assessed, and it goes beyond just the federal workforce.
Our Council of Economic Advisors said that it cost about $15 billion a week, and it accumulates to maybe 1.5% of GDP when you account for multiplier effects. And their current estimate is that 60,000 Americans, not government workers, have lost their jobs because of the reduced economic output.
Hassett also said that despite the economic downturn, there is enough tariff revenue for the president's $2,000 tariff checks, but it will require Congress to pass the legislation. And despite the shutdown ending, the FAA is still suppressing 6% of flights out of safety concerns. According to FlightAware.com, more than 2,800 flights were delayed within, into, or out of the U.S. today. A little over 1,000 were canceled. Not much of a change from yesterday when just under 3,000 flights were delayed with 910 cancellations. Be sure to check your flights for tomorrow because already more than 400 have been canceled. And today, Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem handed out checks of $10,000 to TSA agents who did not miss work for the last 6 weeks, despite not being paid at the time while they worked.
We are going to not only continue their paychecks like they should have received all along, but also they're going to get a bonus check for stepping up, taking on extra shifts, for showing up each and every day, for serving the American people, and taking seriously the mission that the Department of Homeland Security takes seriously.
Now, TSA hasn't stated exactly how many agents have called out and did not report to work, but Travel.com reported that number to be around 1 in 5 in the Mid-Atlantic region in early November. The government executive reports that as many as 80% of the air traffic controllers in the New York area called out in the final weekend of October. Also, with the end of the shutdown comes the refunding of the SNAP program that feeds up to 42 million Americans. USDA Secretary Brooke Rollins told CNN today the agency is moving funds to pay all recipients of SNAP their due benefits, but the actual disbursements don't come from the federal government.
But keep in mind, the SNAP program is funded by the federal government, but it is the 50 states and 50 different infrastructures that move that money out, which is what made it so complicated, the patchwork. But it's moving, it's coming, and for those who really depend on it, good news is on the way.
The secretary says that most recipients could start getting their benefits by the end of this week. They hope that all beneficiaries receive their payments by Monday. Now that the House is back in session, next week lawmakers are set to vote on a bill to release all of the files related to the Jeffrey Epstein case. As national correspondent Matt Gelko reports, Republicans are likely to split with the White House in supporting the measure.
With the government shutdown over, the case of accused underage sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein and his alleged connections to the world's most powerful people is back on the agenda for Congress. Enough members of the House signed on to force a vote next week on a bill that would mandate the Department of Justice release all Epstein files. despite Republican leadership being opposed.
The discharge petition is not only reckless, it is also a totally moot point. The Oversight Committee has been working, as you all know, around the clock, working on this.
The House Oversight Committee released 20,000 new pages of Epstein emails, part of a subpoena of the Epstein estate. The messages go back as far as 2011 and run through 2019 and mention President Trump multiple times, suggesting Epstein had damaging info on him. There's also messages with now former UK Prince Andrew and former President Bill Clinton is mentioned as well. Even with the huge file drop, the victims' attorneys say there's a lot more out there.
These are not the files that everyone's been talking about. So these are not the FBI files.
Which is why the spotlight is back on the upcoming House vote. Tennessee Republican Tim Burchett tried to pass the Epstein files bill through a process known as unanimous consent, where lawmakers wouldn't need to go on record with their vote. He accused Democrats of blocking it.
I hope Epstein's burning in hell right now. I have no love lost for that dirtbag, but the Democrats once again have proven my point. It's all about the show. It's about them. It's about power.
It's unclear if the files the DOJ has contain the same documents that are being put out in multiple leaks and releases.
I think right now it's still just kind of dripping out. We need to see a full, total document dump and let people make their own conclusions.
Now, even if the bill does pass the House, it would still need to clear the Senate. And if that happens, it's unlikely the president would sign the bill. He's repeatedly called the situation a hoax.
So, Matt, what are voters saying about the Epstein issue?
Well, the latest polls were taken before the most recent developments this week, but they were consistently showing that people were not happy with how the Trump administration was handling the issue. A Reuters poll from last month had disapproval of the handling of the case at 59%, and when broken down by party, even 4 out of 10 Republicans were only saying that they did approve of it.
In Washington, D.C., Matt Galka, thank you. Well, hundreds of residents in a small Oklahoma community are able to return to their homes after an ammonia gas leak today. Authorities say it spewed from a tanker truck in a hotel parking lot. Roughly 30 people were hospitalized, and emergency workers in gas masks went door to door, waking people up to evacuate. The public was asked to continue to monitor for breathing problems. A sad end to the search for a missing coal miner in West Virginia. Governor Patrick Morrisey says crews found the body of 42-year-old Steve Lipscomb this morning inside a flooded mine. They'd been pumping water out of the mine to safely enter. Lipscomb had been trapped since Saturday when a wall was compromised, causing a flood. The other miners working at the time made it out safely.
In just 10 days, we've been able to remove, in partnership with the state of Florida, over 230 of the worst heinous criminals from their streets.
You heard it. More than 200 criminal illegal immigrants have been arrested in Florida during a 10-day operation that DHS Secretary Kristi Noem calls Operation Dirtbag. It's officially called Operation Criminal Return. Noem said child predators, rapists, and violent criminals were targeted. She said she hopes to replicate this model nationwide. Well, Customs and Border Protection officials are coming to Charlotte, North Carolina as early as Saturday for an immigration enforcement operation. That's according to a North Carolina sheriff who said 2 federal officials told him that. The Department of Homeland Security Assistant Secretary declined to comment. Harjinder Singh, the semi-truck driver charged in a crash that killed 3 people on Florida's Turnpike, appeared virtually before a St. Lucie County judge today, along with his interpreter because he does not speak English. His defense team asked today for more information about the vehicles involved in the crash, as well as samples of the victim's blood for independent analysis. Singh remains held without bond. His next court appearance is set for January 15th. Meanwhile, in California, 17,000 commercial driver's licenses have been revoked by the state. Transportation Secretary says this move proves California was caught red-handed. He said, quote, "This is only the tip of the iceberg," and promises that the Transportation Department will continue to force California to remove every illegal immigrant who holds a license from behind the wheel of semi-trucks and school buses. Gavin Newsom's office responded to the Associated Press saying all of the licenses issued had valid work authorizations from the federal government, but they removed the licenses from those whose legal status and the U.S. expired. Well, a judge is considering arguments she heard today about the prosecutor who charged former FBI Director James Comey and New York Attorney General Letitia James. Their lawyers argue the cases against them should be dismissed because the interim U.S. Attorney for the Eastern District of Virginia, Lindsay Halligan, is illegally in that role, they say. DOJ lawyers said there was, quote, at best a paperwork error. The judge said she'd rule before Thanksgiving. A former top aide to California Governor Gavin Newsom has pleaded not guilty to charges of stealing campaign funds. Federal prosecutors accuse Dana Williamson of being part of a scheme to steal campaign money from former federal health secretary Xavier Becerra's dormant account. Prosecutors allege she set up another official to take over her role in the scheme before she left to become Newsom's chief of staff. That was in late 2022. She faces up to 20 years in prison if charged, for the charges, rather, if convicted. Well, the parents of at least 2 babies sickened in an infantile botulism outbreak are suing the makers of ByHeart baby formula. Earlier this week, ByHeart voluntarily recalled all of its formula nationwide, including can and single-serve sticks. The FDA says from August 1st through November 10th, at least 84 infants have been treated for botulism. 36 were exposed to powdered infant formula, and 15 of those babies had consumed ByHeart's product. The company says it will keep working to ensure safety and transparency going forward. Over 1,000 Starbucks union baristas are set to go on strike at 65 U.S. stores across 45 cities today. The strike coincides with one of Starbucks' busiest annual traditions, Red Cup Day. Now, workers are demanding better staffing and higher pay, and that Starbucks resolve what they call unfair labor practices. Starbucks and the union have blamed each other for failing to agree on a new contract. Both say they're ready to negotiate. Starbucks says most of its stores were open and operational as usual today. Meanwhile, there's no end date for the strike. A new wave of cell phone bans is sweeping classrooms across the country, with student distraction, mental health issues, and teacher burnout all colliding at once. The National News Desk, Angela Brown, explains.
A growing list of states say cell phones are hurting learning, hurting mental health, hurting school culture. Wisconsin just became the 21st state to ban cell phone use during class. Ohio did it earlier this year, but not without parent frustration.
The pushback was this: well, what happens if something happens in the school? I want my child to call me. Well, I got news for you. I grew up, and you did too. If something happened to you, you used the phone in the office, and they called your parents. And you are just fine.
In Ohio, some exemptions. Students can use their phone to monitor health concerns and during an active threat. But overall, 21 states have completely banned cell phone use during the school day. The Portland, Maine School District now requires students to keep their phones in a pouch that locks.
Removing the ability for them to check their phones kind of just allows them to focus more in class and then kind of care more about what they're working on.
But a growing body of data says the bans may be worth it. The National Bureau of Economic Research just released a new report finding in the second year after a cell phone ban went into effect in one Florida school district, student test scores went up, attendance went up. David Leach from Cedarville University says these bans free teachers up to do their job.
What teacher is going to be there continuously enforcing a phone policy in a class? They'd rather be teaching it rather than it just gives them some other kind of classroom management headache.
And teachers say the cell phones are a headache as well. A Pew poll found that 72% of high school teachers say cell phone distraction is a major problem in the classroom. Reporting in Washington, D.C., I'm Angela Brown.
Coming up, boosting resources for teenagers aging out of foster care. More on the latest initiative from First Lady Melania Trump, announced today from the White House. And did you know that restrictions on THC are included in the funding bill that reopened the government? We take you to Texas, where some business owners may face closing up shop. Plus, powering the future, a look at the Trump administration's plan to break ground on 10 new nuclear reactors in the next 5 years. President Trump signs an executive order alongside the First Lady meant to provide more support for young people who have experienced foster care. The Fostering the Future effort is part of First Lady Melania Trump's Be Best initiative. The order is aimed at providing more pathways to success for teens transitioning out of foster care and into adulthood. President Trump thanked the First Lady for her leadership on the effort.
As we make America great again, we are going to protect American children in foster care, and we're going to ensure that they will never, ever be forgotten. These children will never be forgotten.
According to the First Lady, the order will provide foster care youth with technology-based scholarships to attend colleges and universities throughout the country. Now, it also unites federal resources with public and private sector partnerships to expand access to mentorships, scholarships, technology, and workforce training. The Trump administration is proposing a portable mortgage to tackle housing market distress. Now, it would let you transfer an existing mortgage and rate to a new property if you move. If the new house is pricier, you'd need to get a second, smaller loan at today's interest rate. The White House also proposed a 50-year mortgage. In both cases, though, fewer loans would be paid off. A significant portion of American women want to leave the United States and move abroad. A new Gallup poll finds 4 in 10 women aged 15 to 44 years old say they'd permanently move abroad if they had the chance. That's 4 times the number of women who said that in 2014. Meanwhile, just 2 in 10 men say they'd leave the U.S. if they could. In 2014, only 6% of men said they'd move abroad. 9 days after Election Day, and Seattle now has a winner in the city's mayoral contest. Democratic incumbent Bruce Harrell says he has conceded the race to challenger and self-proclaimed Democratic Socialist candidate Katie Wilson. The latest tally shows Wilson leading Harrell by fewer than 2,000 votes. King County Elections says they are still counting mail-in ballots that have been slow to arrive. Wilson now joins Zohran Mamdani as newly elected mayors under the Democratic Socialist handle. Well, President Trump received a briefing of possible options for operations in Venezuela from high-ranking military officials last night at the White House. This is according to CBS. Secretary of War Pete Hegseth and the chairman of the Joint Chiefs were in the briefing. The U.S. military has been building up resources off of the coast of Venezuela. CBS sources say no decision has been made on next steps. This comes as Venezuela's president looks to China for economic help. The two countries agreed to a zero-tariff trade deal at the Shanghai Expo 2025 earlier this month. The deal could present new tensions between the United States and China, of course, just as President Trump and President Xi came to an agreement on trade last month in Korea. We have reporters all across the country in your neighborhoods covering issues that matter to you. We're taking the pulse of America, and we start in Texas, where THC business owners fear they may have to shut down. Well, the law ending the federal government shutdown includes a controversial provision banning hemp THC that is intoxicating. THC businesses in Austin, Texas are concerned about the impact. Now, earlier this year, a similar ban was proposed at the state level, but Governor Greg Abbott vetoed it.
Not again. Not again. We just went through this fight in Texas all summer long. We are unfortunately going to be liquidating this store. Essentially closing our hemp.
You'd have to figure out something to pivot into that is not related to hemp. I'm not even sure yet. It's really difficult to come up with an entirely different business.
Texas Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick supported the state ban proposal and said he believes the federal ban will, quote, save a generation from getting hooked on dangerous drugs.
Destruction, debris, and devastation. All that's left after a car plowed into this East Side home. On the porch sat 7-year-old Janice Walker, who never made it out alive.
She was sitting on her porch having a cigarette because she had just asked us for a cigarette. And, you know, I told her, I said, go sit down and have a good time with your cigarette. And I never thought this would be the last moments of her life.
Her neighbor Marie, clearly shaken up as she recounts the traumatic moments. Janice's niece, Antoinette Hamilton, says her aunt will be remembered as a kind-hearted person who loved her family.
Janice's son, he's actually going to get boards and stuff, so he's
trying to stay busy to keep his mind off his mother. He hasn't had time to really grieve, so he's boarding up.
Hamilton says there used to be hedges and fencing in front of the home, but claimed the city took them down. She believes if it was still there, this could have been prevented.
Tensions flare at a Newport City Council meeting Wednesday night.
No ice! No ice! No ice!
But the main issue the community is speaking out against is the possibility of an ICE detention facility.
I think many of us here are here for those who are too afraid to come out of the shadows, too afraid of what these ICE people will do.
Meanwhile, city leaders say they are being transparent with what they know, which is very little, they say, because DHS is not being transparent with them and not giving them any answers.
Coming up, the big push to expand America's power capacity and bring down rising energy costs. Why the Trump administration is betting big on nuclear power. The rapid growth of artificial intelligence is driving up America's demand for power fast. President Trump says expanding nuclear energy is key to keeping up. The National News Desk, Kayla Gaskins, joins us from the White House with what Energy Secretary Chris Wright is saying.
For years, millions of Americans have watched their energy bills tick upwards.
My electricity bills are higher.
The reasons vary from state to state, from wildfires to natural gas prices. Inflation's played a role too. And now energy-hungry AI data centers are adding even more demand to the grid. As big tech focuses on developing AI, companies like Meta, Alphabet, and Microsoft are investing in nuclear energy to power those systems. We spoke with Energy Secretary Chris Wright.
Big tech is a key part of the piece that's going to relaunch American nuclear power. They want a huge appetite for power. They want as much as they can get.
President Trump campaigned on expanding America's nuclear energy production to meet rising energy demands.
We will embrace all forms of energy, including nuclear. Nuclear's a great energy.
On Monday, Secretary Wright announced nuclear power projects will receive the lion's share of funding from the Department of Energy's loan program.
This is going to take private capital, private technology, private customers, but a little help from the government as well.
Currently, there are 94 nuclear reactors in the U.S., providing about 19% of the country's electricity, a share that's remained steady since the 1980s. In May, President Trump signed an executive order calling on the U.S. to break ground on 10 large nuclear reactors by 2030.
All nuclear, it's a hot industry. It's a brilliant industry. You have to do it right.
We're looking at locations today very carefully. And in the coming months, we'll announce locations that are going to see very large development of nuclear power plants.
Last month, the administration struck a deal with Westinghouse to invest $80 billion to build those nuclear power plants.
What do you see as the biggest roadblocks nuclear energy faces right now?
Supply chain. We have President Trump all in. We're reforming the regulatory regime. We have lots of private capital. We have government capital to match it. The problem right now is just execution. It's just having enough workers and enough supply chain to build these plants as quickly as we'd like.
President Trump has laid out a target of quadrupling the U.S.'s nuclear capacity by 2050. At the White House, I'm Kayla Gaskins reporting for the National News Desk, America's News Now.
Coming up, the Northern Lights were spotted as far south as Florida this week, and the show's not over. Where in the country? Some will catch a glimpse of the vibrant wonder tonight. If you missed spotting the Northern Lights this week, you may be in luck. Another wave could bring the show back tonight, according to NOAA, which says geomagnetic storm conditions are still possible. Particularly, folks in 10 states could see the dazzling display of the aurora borealis. This includes Alaska, parts of Washington, Idaho, Montana, Michigan, and Maine, just to name a few. A gradual return to quieter space weather is expected by Friday, so don't forget to look up. All right, that does it for this edition of the National News Desk. I'm Taylor Murray. Thanks for watching.